What do you guys think about this particular passage? If we're talking about that transitionary point, right, where was he an actual spiritual Elohim style being before becoming born through womb of a woman on earth? In the Septuagint, in Psalm 110, verse 3, it says, "With you the power in the days of your might, in the splendor of the holy ones, from the womb, before the morning star, I begot you."
Yeah, that's a good one there, Brother Sean, in Psalm 110. As much as I've read the Septuagint, that's the first time I've ever had anybody bring that text up to me. So that's a good point, Psalm 110. I'm familiar with the Hebrews 1 text, and I would use firstborn, prototokos in the Greek there as meaning preeminent. And I think bringing him into the world refers to out of the womb of the Virgin Miriam and into the world. There's text in John that talks about how that people that are born from the womb are men that cometh into the world. The Psalm 110 text I can't speak to because I haven't researched that.
Well, I'm thinking to myself, what is the morning star when you read it, Sean and WesBlaze?
My thoughts were, the first thing I pair it with was in First Enoch, as I mentioned earlier in 48, where it says that before the sun was created, he was named in the existence and existed in the presence of the Father.
So the morning star is Yeshua?
No, I would say the morning star being the sun, maybe in that understanding.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Yeshua, right? Pre-existent Yeshua?
Yeshua being created before the sun was created.
Yes, you mean S-U-N, son?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I kept thinking like, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Who's on first? No, we got it.
I know. I like this text. I like this text on the screen, and I would agree with this. I would agree with this text. Even before the sun and the constellations were created, before the stars of heaven were made, his name was named in front of the Lord of Spirits. Lord of Spirits, I would take there to mean Yahweh, the mighty one of spirits. And I believe that Yeshua's name was named. I believe that Yeshua was crucified. He was the lamb slain before the foundations of the world, but not literally hanging on a tree or a cross, but it was already as good as done. Anything foreordained or predestined in Yahweh's perfect plan is as good as accomplished, but it doesn't get accomplished literally until the proper season or proper time. So I think Yeshua was named in front of the Lord of Spirits before all these things were created. Brother Sean, can I couple in Luke 1? I love that you brought that text up. It's one of my favorite New Testament texts. I want to couple Matthew 1 with it because Matthew 1 also teaches the virgin conception. Right. And we would say like Matthew 1 piggybacks, if it's okay to say piggy, we're Torah keepers. It piggybacks off of the Tanakh in that the promised Davidic Messiah, Matthew 1:1 starts off the generation, which is the Greek word Genesis, the beginning of Yeshua the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. And then it gives a genealogy. So we're talking about a human being that's a descendant. Once again, he's a descendant of David and Abraham. Yeah, and then it goes down and go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just quick question though, because you have already acknowledged, just so the viewers don't get lost, you have already acknowledged that you believe in the Holy Spirit overshadowing Mary and conceiving not with the sperm of Joseph, but through the power of God's Spirit. Is that what you said earlier? Okay, so you do agree with that. But absolutely, by mentioning this and making the statement you just did, you're just saying he's counted as in the family genealogy of David back to Abraham because he's in the line of Mary and Joseph.
I would say two ways. I think this proves that Mary had Davidic DNA in her, number one, and it's okay for it to come through women. We have the daughters of Zelophehad in the book of Numbers. Mm-hmm. But I also think that he's legally Joseph's son by adoption. I think Luke 3:23 uses the word as was customary or supposed. Yeah. And adoption is a very Hebraic concept. So both ways, I think. But the point is that Matthew 1 starts off by saying this is the beginning. This is the genesis of Jesus Christ. He's the son of Abraham, the son of David. And then it gives a genealogy. This guy begat this guy, Genao. Meaning that, Abraham begat Isaac. Isaac came into existence after Abraham. And then it goes on down. Then it speaks of that which is begotten in the womb of Mary. And if you study the word begotten in Greek, it has to do with coming into existence. Not a literal pre-existence and incarnation, but somebody that comes into existence. So he was definitely a special man. That's why I mentioned Adam's, Adam being created from the dust of the earth, but and being son of God.
Okay.
Yeshua is the second man, Adam. He had a unique creation. He's the beginning of this new creation that Yahweh is making for the kingdom that is to come. And he's so special. We're not saying that he's just, a prophet like Islam, or although he is a prophet, but he's not just a prophet. We're not saying he's just some Joe Blow down the street Israelite man. He's the most special man to ever walk the face of the earth. There'll never be another man like him. He's the head of every man, and right now he's second in command over the entire heavens and earth. I mean, that's very, very special.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
So it's been said a couple times though that you guys have made the comparison that somebody who's a descendant of people like Abraham and David, that he could not have existed before then. So I'm sure you guys hear this verse all the time, and I'm very curious to hear how you interpret it. John 8:58, of course, where he says, before Abraham was, I am. Before Abraham was born, I am, even in this translation. So I'm curious.
Yeah, that's a good verse. I love that text. So I think that the I am he, I think it should say I am he, because of the lack of the predicate there. So before Abraham was, I am he. And I think that refers back to the beginning of the Gospel of John, in John 4, when he's talking with the woman at the well, and she says, when the Messiah comes, he'll tell us all of these things. And Yeshua says, I am he, ego and me. And so if you fast forward that up to John 8, I think he's still claiming the same thing. I'm the Messiah. I'm the promised one. And the before Abraham part, I believe it's referring to, as the passage in Enoch said, he was named before Abraham ever existed. He was already.
What are you saying by using the word named? What do you think Enoch is saying in that passage when he's saying he was named?
I would say in the plan, the text that you put on the screen, it says he was named in front of the Lord of Spirits. I don't think that text, just reading it, says that he had to be in a literal existence right there, but that he could be spoken about and foretold before all of these things. And I think that's what John 8 is talking about. I think the Pharisees misunderstood him. He said, Abraham rejoiced to see my day, not me. But Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad. And the Pharisees, they don't get it right. They say, you're not even 50 years old, and how can you say you've seen Abraham? And they're taking him literally, but he's speaking spiritually there in that text. He's saying, before Abraham existed, I am he. I am the Messiah, the promised Messiah. And they pick up stones to stone him because they think that he's blaspheming, probably because they didn't believe he was the Messiah. I don't think they thought he was saying he was Yahweh there. But I think they just thought, no, this guy's not the Messiah. He's got a demon, and all of that. So
some good
just
examples
if I may, I'm
Sure.
sorry, John, just 1 second to address before we get away from what he just mentioned. So in this passage, Matthew, that you were just referencing, we had on screen a minute ago from Enoch 48, it says in verse 2, at that hour. So it's given like a specific qualifier of time. In addition to the qualifier that we had already read, it was before the sun, moon, and stars. But it also says that he was named in the presence of the Lord of Spirits. So are you saying that he was just announced in front of the angels? Because that's
what it sounds like to me in that text. Be like if I was standing up in front of the congregation here in Georgia, and I named Sean Griffin in front of the presence of the congregation, it'd be kind of an illustration.
It doesn't say in front of the presence of the congregation. It says in the presence of the Lord of Spirits.
Sure. So in the presence of the Lord of Spirits, that's Yahweh. That's the Most High.
But he's the one talking, though. So like, if I would never stand up in front of a group of people and say, hey, I'm going to go to the store. In the presence of me, I say this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't understand. To me, the language is pretty clear that it's like he's saying this to all of the people he would need to announce it to. And that, in my understanding, if mankind hasn't been created yet, because this is before even day 4, Jubilees and Enoch, and I would even say Job chapter 38, let us know that the angels were created on day 1. And it's specifically stated in the book of Jubilees, they were created on day 1. So that would be the audience to whom he actually announces this to. And there would be, this is just my interpretation for the audience, since, just as a response to what you said.
Sure.
This would be the whole point of this conversation being recorded. was that there's a reason for the angels need to know who's in charge. All right. So he has to announce and name him in the presence of the Lord of Spirits to it validates that information. And then we see that, they have the, the audience of the angels there. Right. So that's, to me, a reasoning, like a practical reason that this would even be recorded. And to me, it goes in line with Yeshua's statement in John chapter 18, verse 36, where he's telling Herod that, my kingdom is not of this earth. And so he's already in charge of the angels in heaven above, but he would have just, dethroned in order to take on this mission and be sent.
2 Timothy 1:9, we are given grace in Yeshua Messiah before the world was. How can I be given anything before the world was unless I was there? Well, in the mind of Yahweh. Hebrews 4:3, works finished from the foundations of the world. I don't know, that's not literal, but we can play the devil's advocate, right? And when we see the book of Enoch, chapter 48 or whatnot, it's the same kind of language. And Revelation 13:8, he was slain before the foundations of the world, but we know before the sun was created, there was no crucifixion.
Absolutely. And let me put this on screen because I was going to mention this. This plays right into the verse we just had on screen. If we go down to verse 4 in that same chapter of Enoch, where it's prophesying the Messiah and explaining what I would suggest is explaining that he's being given that authority over the angels, announced in the presence of the Father, so the angels know what's up, what's the authority structure of heaven. He then explains, like you're talking about, John, why we're given that blessing before the world began, because it was announced what he would do at the same moment, at that hour, like verse 2 says, at that hour, the Son of Man was named in the presence of the Lord of Spirits, so that he would do what? He would be a staff to the righteous, warn to stay themselves. And here we get into the Isaiah 57 language of him actually being the Messiah, a light to the Gentiles, a hope of all those who are troubled in heart. And then, of course, his actual reign on the earth when people will worship him and praise him. And then it goes on to say, for this reason, has he been chosen and hidden before him before the creation of the world and forevermore. So the context itself says that exactly what would line up with First Timothy 1:9, which is this idea that he was announced this is what he was going to do. He was chosen for this reason, and it was even told to all the angels before day 4, even before day 4.
I also like to think Jeremiah 1:5 is a good example where before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Another way of saying that is before you were born, I named you. But we don't think Jeremiah existed. And so again, I think we're not too far-fetched to say that Yahweh speaks like this quite often in the prophecies.
WesBlaze, did you want to chime in before I go to the next section?
I'd love to look at we had started to look at Enoch 48. I think you had looked at a different translation of it, because I favor I can't remember if it's the Richard Lawrence or the R.H. Charles, because if you'd go back to my slides on
Sure.
Enoch 48. Yeah, just therefore the elect and concealed one, Yeshua, existed in his presence, existed before the world was created and forever. In his presence he existed and has revealed to the saints and to the righteous the wisdom of the Lord of Spirits, for he has preserved the lot of the righteous, because they have hated and rejected this world of iniquity and have detested all its works in ways in the name of the Lord of Spirits. So I favor this translation, obviously, just because it says he did exist indeed.
I think that's a good verse for your position.
Yeah. When I'm reading, yeah. I'm sorry, Matt. I don't mean to interrupt. Go for it.
No, I was just saying I don't mind if you make a good point. I don't mind saying this. It's a good point. That's if I took your position, I would definitely bring this text up. Yeah.
Sure.
Do you guys agree that the elect and the concealed one could say the elect is the same one as at the bottom 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, the 6th line it says has revealed to the saints and to the righteous. That would be us. I would say like it's sounding like we pre-existed also, because he's saying that he was revealed to the saints at this time in Enoch 48, which seems to be in the presence before the world was created.
I would say that these are two titles, concealed one and elect, are both used of the Son of Man, the Messiah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's just say the elect is Yeshua. So I'm going to say, therefore, the elect, Yeshua, and the concealed one, Yeshua, existed in his presence, Yahweh the Father, before the world was created, and forever. In his presence he existed, and has revealed to the saints and to the righteous. That would be us, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and so I can't help but wonder, like,
in the book of Enoch, the angels are also called the elect, the saints, and the righteous. Because
Mm-hmm.
remember, they're a part of the family of Israel with us. They're just in a different location.
Okay, so those are not us. Those are angels. I'm just trying to understand Enoch. I don't read Enoch, but I'm just the first time setting my eyes on Enoch 48. I'm trying to skim through it, and
Sean
I'm like,
was just saying it could be both. That yeah, the saints could be both angels in heaven and mankind.
Okay, because when I keep reading here at the semicolon, for he has preserved the lot of the righteous. So it sounds like he's preserving something for us, not angels, correct?
The word lot is the word for inheritance. And we all know that the inheritance is what he's king over, which is the New Jerusalem, which is the inheritance of the saints. Yeah, that would be.
Yeah. So I can't help but say, well, we don't know if the righteous or the saints were angels or humans, but then when we continue reading, it sounds like the context is saying it's talking about us.
Mankind. Yes, sir.
Yeah, mankind. And so if that is our understanding to a certain extent, we have to say that this language used in Enoch 48 is used continuously for not only the elect concealed one, but also for the saints who is us. I don't know proper grammar here, but do you know what I mean? Is that now we're pre-existing also.
No, I don't see that from that.
No, it doesn't say that. No, actually the book of Enoch talks about, makes a distinguishment between the actual saints of the earth that are born and how it does not pretend that they pre-existed in any way, nor does it speak of them like that. And this elect one in verse 48, verse 5 is consistent with chapter 61 of First Enoch. I think it's verse 10.
I think that's the very next slide, if you would.
Oh, is it?
It's short, the last one on that one.
Yeah, right here.
Then shall the kings, the princes, and all who possess the earth glorify him who has dominion over all things, him who was concealed. So the kings, the princes, all who possess the earth being mankind, and they're being said that they will glorify the Messiah, the concealed Son of Man. For from the beginning the Son of Man existed in secret, whom the Most High preserved in the presence of his power and revealed to the elect. So
if you guys ever want to check out my channel, if you just type in Kingdom in Context, History and Timeline, and I go through the entire manuscript history of the book of Enoch, both the Latin, the Greek, the Hebrew, the Paleo-Hebrew, the Syriac, I talk about all of it. And I go through the Dead Sea Scroll findings. I talk about it's a compilation of 6 different scrolls, including the book of Noah. We do make a strong delineation on my channel, and I think WesBlaze is in agreement. We do not give weight or authority to the books of 2nd and 3rd Enoch. Right. There's no manuscript chain of custody or historical, even some of the theology taught in there doesn't line up. But the book of 1st Enoch, I have not found anything that is out of order with everything taught in the canon that we do know and are familiar with, the 66. So for your consideration, I would, highly recommend studying the book of Enoch. John, I know you said you thought it was pseudepigraphal. Have you ever had a chance to study it out? Have you ever read the book of Enoch?
Yeah. So when I was looking up, all the quote unquote scholars have said it's all pseudepigrapha, but I don't have like notes on, at hand. I wasn't prepared to have an Enoch discussion. So I can talk about Balaam. I have notes on Balaam.
Sure.
Find that in the Bible.
It's interesting because, pseudepigrapha usually means that it's written by someone, but ascribed to somebody else than it was written to, right? Because we do agree that the collection known as what we have of 1st Enoch was written by partially Enoch, Methuselah, Noah. And so there's that collection there that has been pieced together and given the name Enoch. But we would ascribe that the prophet Enoch did have these words, some of those words scribed for sure. And
all of it would have been copied and rescribed by Ezra in the 6th century BC anyway. So it's only because of Ezra that we even have the fragments we still do. So yeah, I think it's an interesting study. I know that there are other, had we all grown up in Ethiopia, we wouldn't even question Enoch. It would just be a part of our daily reading.
That was the other thing I was going to say is I ran across a Ge'ez translation from, Ge'ez to the English from the Ethiopic, antiquity. And that a part of the slides that I had was from some of the wording from that. So it all attests to some of the other translations that we have, like in the Greek and the Aramaic.